Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Osaka YMCA 2023 keynote and panel discussion brought to you by the GYC right here at the Asahi Newspaper Studio in Osaka, Japan. And also online, my name is Juan Jose Palacio. I am a Osaka YMCA International Business College student and GYC intern from Colombia. I will be one of your hosts and panel moderator for today's event. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Asahi Shimbun, and in particular, Mr. Tetsuki Matsuno, Executive Director of Kansai Square and his team, for their wonderful support for promoting this event to their online readership and for providing the studio event for today. Thank you very much. I also like to introduce my co-host, Ms. Shirley Budiman, who is joining us from Beppu, Kyushu, Japan.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I am the youth spokesperson for our Global Youth Conference, and I'll be assisting Jose today with the panel moderation, which I'll be leading the second session. Thank you.
Welcome, Shirley. Before we hear from our keynote speaker, I'd like to ask Mr. Kenichiro Ogawa, Osaka YMCA General Secretary and CEO, to open the session. Mr. Ogawa?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kenichiro Ogawa. I'm a General Secretary, CEO of Osaka YMCA. Thank you for joining us today. The YMCA is a non-profit organization that exists in 120 countries and regions around the world. We are engaged in the empowerment of youth people. The Global Youth Conference focuses on youth empowerment and is organized by YMCA's international networks. Youth from various backgrounds come together to discuss and interact with each other. Today's theme, the issue of global environment, requires us to act responsibility for our next generations. We need natural environment. However, the earth does not need us, humans. Unless we act responsibility, the problem of global environment will not improve. Today, I'd like to express my thanks to Asahi Shimbun and panelists and our viewer for attending. I'm looking forward to hearing the lively and interesting discussion from our esteemed panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ogawa. Definitely a very kind reminder that the earth doesn't need us, but we are the one who have to act responsibly as individuals. Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Ogawa.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ogawa. I would also like to say that it's wonderful to have so many participants join us here for this session in Japan. We have a small number joining us here in the Asahi Shimbun studio and a large number joining us online. I like to also welcome those who are joining from other countries, such as from New Zealand, Australia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, Philippines, and the United States. Before we begin with, I would like to just give a few housekeeping matters to begin with. 日本語の同時通訳をアクセスしたい方、住む画面の下に地球マークをクリックしていただければ、日本語の通訳者が聞こえます。コメントや質問のパナリストにお聞きしたい場合は、Zoom の Q&A チャットボックスに日本語で入力しても構いません。よろしくお願いいたします。
Next, I'd like to remind our online participants that you are free to comment and also post questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For those of you who are in the studio, we will have given you the QR code that leads to a Google form where you can post your questions there. And we will do our best to ensure that we respond to all of your questions. If we do not have time to respond to all of the questions, we will share them with our panelists and ask them to respond after the session in a written format. Also, if you face any technical difficulty, please do not hesitate to contact our tech support through the chat box. And of course, we'd like to remind everyone to be respectful and also positive in your comments. I'll also like to mention that this session is being recorded at all times, and we will be sharing this session as a learning tool for our future Global Youth Conference participants.
Thank you so much, Shirley, for that important information. Now, I'd like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. If we could keep it in 30 seconds, I would like to start with you, Brahan-san.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bastian. I've experienced of the war. We have a very far in COVID country, and thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bahram Inaldu. I'm originally from Iran. I've experienced of Iran-Iraq war. Maybe it's very rare. And we have organic farm in Kobe, Kitaku. We are making organic rice, vegetables, and herbs with our partner, with these companies and university. As a matter of fact, one of our SDGs partner from Nishimura Coffee, Mr. Yoshitani, and one of our student internship today, they are here. We are pleased to have them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bahram. Now, thank you so much. Now I'd like to move to our second panelist, Mr. Kosuke Inai, also join us here in the studio.
Okay. Hello, my name is Kosuke Inai, and I'm a Japanese. And I'm a high school student currently in Osaka YMCA International High School at Osaka. And I'm not good at Japanese, so it was lucky that this event is in English. And I also founded the student council in my high school right now. And I'm a passionate youth leader. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kosuke. Now moving to our third panelist is Miss Madeline Schoenfeld, joining us all the way from New York. A very good evening. Madeline-san, I believe it's already past midnight where you are.
Hi, it's almost midnight, but yeah, it's great to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Madeline Schoenfeld. I work as a planner for Cameron Engineering, an urban planner. I do geospatial analysis and I help communities take steps towards clean energy. I have also volunteered with the Osaka YMCA for past GYCs. Thank you.
Welcome, Madeline. Then our fourth panelist is Mr. Robin Takashi Lewis, joining us from Tokyo today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. It's really a great honor to meet all of you. So my background is for the past 15 years or so, I've been working in sustainable development across private sector, across social enterprise, and across the NGO space. So I'm very excited to have this discussion. And right now, I'm the representative director of an organization called Social Innovation Japan. And we focus a lot on empowering young people and older people as well related to environment. Our main project right now is called My Mizu, which I'll be talking about later on. So thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robin. And then last but not least, and finally, Miss Irina Imai. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Irina Imai. Today, I'd like to give you a keynote speech as a climate activist. Currently, I'm living in Osaka and working for a renewable energy company. I used to be a founder of Fridays for Future Kyoto and Kobe and Climate Youth Japan. Today, I'm really excited to have panel discussion with you later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we are honored that Irina will delivering our keynote speech today. And now I'd like to ask Ms. Irina Imai to come to the podium to deliver her keynote speech titled Towards Sustainable Living. Why we need to act now. Please, Ms. Irina.
So again, thank you for coming today and watching from other countries as well. Today's my keynote title is Why We Need to Act Now. So climate and environmental crisis that seem to be slowing are actually fasting upon you. The Greenland ice sheet is melting at an accelerating rate. And in the worst case scenario, 60% of Japan's sandy beaches will disappear by the end of 21st century. By 2050, the amount of plastic debris in the ocean will be bigger than the amount of fish in the water. On average, actually, we consume microplastic for a single credit card every week. Last year, 1/3 of Pakistan was flooded and 8 million people had to escape. It is said that this was caused by a heat wave that melted glaciers, causing river level to rise, and then monsoon hit. Insect populations around the world are declining by 1 to 2% each year. More than 2/3 of the world's known organisms are insects. In Japan, the frequency of heavy rainfalls has roughly doubled in the past 10 years comparing to 1980. So I made a random list of recent news items. What are your impressions so far? Some might say I'm only intentionally highlighting those news stands out in particular. However, I guess you could imagine what kind of people are suffering from climate change and environmental crisis. So here is a graph of recent temperature rise around the world. Look at this graph. You can see that within the last 2,000 years, temperature have risen sharply over especially last 150 years. In 2021, 1.1 degrees up from 1850. The graph also zooms in on the last 150 years and shows simulated temperature. Temperature change due to natural variability alongside actual temperature change. So climate change is occurred because of human activities. then the latest science leaves no doubt that human influence has been warming the atmosphere, oceans, and land. A decade or so ago, it didn't clearly, the science said, it's highly likely, but it's getting actually definitely. The report was made based on 14,000 scientific papers from around the world. And the Japanese government also endorses the report contents. I apologize for continuing such boring scientific graphs. Let me show you one more scientific theory. Around this season, you probably want to fill your bathtub with hot water because it's cold, and I also like bathing. I will tell you how climate change works based on bathtub theory. Look at this graph. So the water level in the bathtub indicates the level of CO2 stored in the atmosphere. The higher the water level, the warmer the earth is. I learned in my elementary school science class that CO2 was about 0.03% in the atmosphere, but these days it's changing. It was 15 years ago, but now 0.04%. So concentration of CO2 is actually increasing. So second, the top shows the amount of CO2 emissions. The bigger you turn on, the more emits. And the drain, finally, shows the net CO2 removals. So what is current situation? As the CO2 levels increase each other, the water level in the bathtub rises. This is because the inflow is greater than outflow. If we reduce the amount of CO2, the water level will not stop for a while, but there will come a time when the inflow and outflow equal. That is net zero or carbon neutral. But there is a still water. They need to be lowered further. So from bathtub theory, I can say that it's important how much water we let out of the tap, and also how fast we can quickly close it. So there is also common understanding of bathtub limit. There is a goal limiting the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The current in 2021 already 1.1 degree rose from 1850. So I will not go into the detail today, but it is said that if 1.5 degree, this line is exceeded, the risk of effect of climate change will increase. So today I'm speaking in front of you all in a big way, but my daily life is like this. So I try to live plastic-free life, and also on weekend I try go to farm to get vegetable for my own. I don't feel like starting balcony farming, although when I travel, I try to choose places that have sustainable practices. I put solar panel on my balcony. Sometimes I participate in demonstration, climate march, and voice up my opinion about the policies. I'm invited these events like today and share my view on the need of climate change. So I'm thinking I'm doing my best in my limited time, but I will not force everyone to do so because the decision is to act on climate change or environmental issue is free will, up to you. So nevertheless, society as a whole must share this crisis and act together for the sake of next generations. So during high school, I first became interested in environmental issue through a speech of TED Talk. Do you know TED Talk? For the purpose of studying English for myself. Later, I got to know the speaker used to be a skeptic economist, but it became clear to me how science, policies, and economics have become disconnected each other. And when environmental issues are discussed, so how reluctant is international community to take action? While science is alarming, politicians or business leaders have not moved for more than 20 years. So when I was in college, I was involved in activity called Fridays for Future to spread the climate movement all over Japan. For example, I held a placard in the street to create opportunity to for people around me to think about climate change. And also I made a proposal to lawmakers so that local government can take the climate change countermeasures. But there I met a lot of difficulties in communication especially. So these are the questions on which we disagree about climate change. So first question is about scientific view on whether human activities are causing global warming or not. And the second is whether Japan or developed countries need to make further reduction efforts within a national framework. So why do such conflicts arise? So I believe the reason is that it's not easy for many people to understand and accept its critical situation right now. So on average, we consume microplastic for a single credit card every week. When you hear about it, you would be really terrified at first, but gradually the fear fades away because you make a reason not to change the lifestyle, or you say responsibility doesn't lie in among us. It's because government or companies. So how can we unite in the same direction? Imagine the culture or livelihood we want to protect or sustain. For example, when we want to stop global warming so that our children can enjoy skiing for next few decades, or so that we can continue to grow this delicious apple next generation, or by sharing the society we want to achieve, many people will be able to sympathize and take action, I believe. Looking up to the future is also necessary to find hope, but also we must not stop reflecting on our responsibility for past emission and the damage that has occurred. So last year, 8 million people had to escape in Pakistan due to flooding. Typhoon Hagibis, do you remember? In Japan, 2019, which caused damage, including overflowing rivers, collapsing homes, even killing people. The damage was not small by any means, but in developed countries such as Japan, has infrastructure to reduce the damage, right? However, in developing country like Pakistan, there is not enough infrastructure for prevention. The problem is that these people live with very little CO2 emission. Pakistan or developing country people, but they are still suffering from global warming, even though they are not the cause of it. So the lifestyle of top 1% of the Earth's population emit twice as many greenhouses gas as the bottom 50s. Where do we fit in? Where do you fit in? If everyone in the world lives the same lifestyle as Japan does right now, we need 2.8 millions, not one planet lifestyle, 2.8. So in order to everyone to be ready to go and do one planet lifestyle, what do we have to change? The first thing we need to do is rethink the common belief. We are satisfied by working a lot, or also we have to work longer at office, and we must fix the imbalance or injustice of situation where some have to go all the way to get water in developing countries, or some have lost their home due to climate disaster. So viewed this way, the problem seems enormous. However, the solution may be closer than you think. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Erina, for that wonderful and thought-provoking keynote. Erina will now join the panel discussion, and we can now begin the panel discussion. And would like to remind that all the panelists that you are free to comment and even ask questions to each other during the panel discussion. If you're online, feel free to raise your Zoom hand button or notify us so that we can give you the space to speak to each other, and we can think of it more as a conversation with each other. Okay, perhaps it might be good to start with you, Erina. So one of the points that I picked up during your speech, as I understood it, you mentioned about how the richest 1% of the world's population actually generate the same amount of CO2 as the poorest 50%. So in your opinion, what responsibility do you think that the wealthy have to deal with this problem? Don't all countries have a role to play in this situation?
Thank you for a question. So in this context, I'd like to separate the action of individuals and nations. So for nations, when setting a national emission reduction target, it's necessary to consider not only economic level, and also they have to care about the past emission responsibilities. And for individuals, we can't choose where we were born, right? Or where we live. So unlike nation, we can't hold a person responsible. So climate justice thinking could be effective to rethink our lifestyle. And business leaders, investors, or Hollywood actors and other wealthy people who use private jets have a great influence. So when they show the positive attitude on climate change. So that is my answer.
Thank you very much, Erina. Maybe I'd like to get a perspective from Robin. So what about in Japan's case? What is the biggest pollution issue right now in Japan, given the story of Maimizu is actually a response to plastic pollution? Do you mind elaborating more on this?
Thank you so much for the question. And thank you, Erina-san, for that wonderful presentation. I think you covered so much in such a short space of time. The first issue I'd like to pick up on is around plastic waste, as you mentioned. Japan is the second highest consumer of plastic packaging in the world. We're also the biggest net exporter. So we export a lot of plastic waste to other countries, mainly in Asia. So plastic waste is a huge problem here. And we talk a lot about recycling, but actually recycling is not always the solution. I can discuss why later on. And another one is carbon emissions, right? Japan is actually the 5th largest emitter of CO2 emissions globally. So we have to fundamentally redesign our systems, our transportation, our agriculture, our energy into a much, much more green model. But let me just say that while Japan has a lot of challenges, Japan is historically a very sustainable country. When you look at concepts like Satoyama, this idea of coexisting with nature, mottainai is a very famous word globally now, which means water waste, or let's waste less. And when you look at periods of history like the Edo period of Japan, Japan was actually a very circular, very environmentally sustainable place. So when we look at the rapid economic growth of the 60s, 70s, 80s, this is when we really, really switched into a consumer-first culture. So for Japan's case, it's not about discovering something new. We need this new sustainability. Well, we do, but we also just need to tap into the past. Look at our history, our past, our sustainability way of thinking, and then build something new from there.
Thank you very much, Robin, for that comment. And I'll just like to remind all of the panelists to speak a bit slower because we are on a live interpretation as well for our interpreter to be easily interpreting it to the others. Okay, thank you so much. And finally, maybe moving it back to Erina-san. Before moving further to talk about sustainability, in your talk, you mentioned about how we must act now and that the situation itself is very urgent. Yet, some people say that climate change isn't a big problem because it has been occurring throughout the history. So what is a message that you would like to say to these people?
Thank you. So in my presentation, I showed the Pakistan disaster case, right? And can still people say the same words, the climate change is not a big deal to Pakistan people? Maybe because they didn't know the fact actually disaster all over the world are happening. And also we kind of live in a safe space where we can escape or we have enough money to prevent it. So it's good idea to look at what is happening now and think about who the problem is for, who is suffering from.
Thank you very much. Maybe Madeline, will you like to give a comment on this?
Absolutely, thank you. I think that I would like to comment on what Robin-san said about plastic use. And I think that one of my pieces of advice for living sustainably is to refuse disposable items. We do live in a consumer culture now, but the great thing is that you can purchase reusable silverware or reusable mug and water bottle, and these things can sort of break the cycle of disposable plastics.
Thank you very much, Madeline, for that comment. Now, we'd like to move a little bit further on the topic of sustainability. So the topic for this panel discussion is Towards Sustainable Living, a challenge of our time. But let's take it back, but we need to ask ourselves first. So what does actually like sustainability mean? I'd like to start by asking the panel, like all of the panelists, to give their perspective on what does sustainable living actually mean to you or your organization. So maybe we can start with Kosuke-san.
Okay, so speaking of sustainability, because of the SDGs, being aware of the word sustainable, nowadays people feel like sustainable means something to sacrifice to get a goal or achieve something. But actually it isn't. You know, sustainable meaning that we should do something that's not too much sacrificing, but doing something for a good, right? And I think we should push that more to the society. and show that you don't need to sacrifice that much, but we can do something small in hand to make our society a better place.
Thank you very much, Kosuke-san. Moving on with Bahram-san, what does sustainable living means to you?
Right, thank you very much. Yeah, as Mr. Ogawa and Erina-san also mentioned about the next generation, what we can do for the next generation. So obviously, we are transplanting by major several issues, 5 different elements. Climate change, COVID-19, AI, world population, and finally the war between Russia and Ukraine. So all these elements is requiring for our human history that we need to act accordingly, shifting our behavior, our belief, and I think our very, very basic things, it's can come from our education, quality education, right? And I was really impressed by Erina-san. She's not only smart, intelligent, but also she is spending her time to produce, let's think very neutrally that by chance, I'm a city boy, by chance, it happened for me to make organic rice and vegetable. I'm not farmer yet, but still I'm learning process. But through all this experience, I understand the process of this thing. And Erina-san, she's making some vegetable with her hand. So globally, I think we need to rearrange our belief, our standard, which is education. And that education goes with the schools and university, that we should not only teaching, because the meaning of education in my country as well, it comes with 2 elements. In Japanese it says, oshiete sodatsu, which is mean teaching and nurturing. So growing together, and what place else can be better than nature that we are creating. This world population that was last year is increasing, and especially in Japan, we need to create more people that they can produce. That's, I think, is very, very essential and important to do.
Thank you very much, Bahram-san. Maybe moving it to Robin-san, because in your movement, you also focus a lot in like educating. So what's your perspective about sustainable living? What does sustainable living means to you?
Well, first, I would break down the word sustainability, right? Sustainability is sustain plus ability, the ability to sustain our species, our way of life. So from a purely definition perspective, I would say sustainability is the ability to meet the needs of today without compromising the needs of tomorrow. So living in that sense sustainably would be ensuring that we consume in a responsible way. But what I would also challenge people today is to think, how can I actually create more value, create a better future? Not just sustainability is very much like, let's kind of continue what we're doing. How can we actually create better value, which is often called regeneration? How can we do regenerative business, regenerative agriculture, and actually create positive value for future generations? That's a whole discussion that we can dive into, but those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe moving it back to Erina-san. So what does sustainable living mean to you?
So my opinion is quite similar to what Robin-san said, but breaking down more to what you can do in your community is contribute to local economy to sustain the community within your town. So I'm currently living in Suita City in Osaka Prefecture. And 2 years ago, I just moved from previous apartment to new one 5 minutes away, but still like was more quiet place, and I felt more I'm living in this district. And I started to go to local center or local restaurants where elderly people run so long time. But comparing to other fast food restaurant, I would choose a local shop to sustain their business for another year. That is what we can do, I think.
Thank you very much, Arina-san. Now, last but not least, we also like to get a perspective from an urban planner, Madeline. And I wanted to ask you that even though we may want to live closer to nature, but many of us are actually living in the cities, right? It's not easy for us to escape urban living. So what does sustainable living in an urban area looks like to you?
Thank you for the question. To me, well, I think of it this way. Many people see city living as being disconnected from nature, but it's actually better for the environment than living in the suburbs. In the suburbs where everything is sprawl and spread out, it takes more resources for you to get to work, school, and things as simple as the grocery store. So in urban planning, there's a concept called the 15-minute city. And it's the idea that all of the wants and needs that a person should have should be located within a 15-minute walk or bike ride from their home. So for someone like me, it seems like a very obvious choice to walk. But for many people, especially in the United States, car ownership is still a necessity.
Thank you
Seen
very
as
much.
a necessity.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So is there any specific reason, like, for example, on why sustainable living or like the car necessity itself is something that cannot really be changed in your perspective in the New York or like in the US context? What drives that?
Yeah, so I don't think that it can't be changed, but I think it will be hard, as we have seen. In the United States, like I said, everything is very spread out, but there's also a stigma against taking public transit, specifically when it comes to riding the bus. A lot of people look down on it and see it as like a last resort. Like it's never an option. It's just something that you have to do if everything else doesn't work out. And people also associate it with being lower class or poor. So this is a problem all across the United States. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Madeline. Maybe can we get a perspective from Kosuke-san? Like, how does public transport seems very popular in Japan, I believe. So like, how's the living situation looks like for the people in Japan to live more sustainably?
Okay, speaking of Japan, public transportation does not look like that, like as United States. Japan, even CEO of a big company uses public transportations like train and buses. And also in Japan, we often use an eco system on a bus and train. And it doesn't use a lot of carbon emission compared to the single vehicle that private people use. And it doesn't have the image of that negativity compared to the United States, meaning that many people will use it and reduce the number of private vehicles passing through the cities. And it might help. And we should give these image illustration of not a bad thing to the United States too.
Thank you very much for the perspective. So maybe I would like to move on to another question. This one is for Robin-san. So in my Mizu's mission statement, you mentioned about a world where sustainable living is the norm. So this is quite idealistic, but in your mind, how does that apply to us? Can you tell us more about your vision?
Yes, I'd love to. So maybe I could quickly show our impact video from 2022. I see we've got it up on the screen. So please go ahead and play. Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing that video. That is just a quick snapshot of our impact from last year. On the surface, Maimizu is about reducing plastic waste. We provide a platform for people to use their reusable containers instead of buying disposable plastic. It's a very simple idea. But I don't think we can save, or solve the environmental crisis with this idea. What we are doing is we're providing a hook for people. So people who might not be interested in the environment have to have some kind of entry point. And so instead, like for us, we do not talk about, we do not start with CO2 emissions, methane gas, ocean acidification, all these very complex problems. We start with a plastic bottle, we hook people in, and then we do a larger transition through our diets, through our energy at home. We have lots of different programs. So for us, it's really about building a movement through technology, through creativity. You can maybe tell from the video, we also have a very positive tone. So we try and really pull people with our positive vision and build a movement for people for sustainable living.
Thank you very much, Robinson. Now I'd like to pass the mic back to Jose, where he'll be leading the second section on the panel discussion under the topic of our progress in sustainability. Over to you, Jose.
Thank you so much, Shirley. Now I would like to start with a question. For Baran-san. So Baran-san, obviously for you at Peace and Nature, living close to the land is very important. Can you tell us quickly about your Peace and Nature project and why you think it's important for future generations?
Yes, thank you again. This is not only about peace and nature. We involve with the community, but unfortunately, the place that we are in the village, the community is majority older. So we are trying to rebuild it by using new technology and the old culture, the combination of these both. And thanks to the SDGs element that has a partnership, and we have several university, Kobe University, Kobe Design University, they are involved, and we have several companies to make it together. So the need is big, is huge, and we have several issues like in the countryside, wild animals and older generation. So, but our food also is really low as a developing country in Japan, 30 few percent. So we need to catch up very quick. So I do believe a school and university, nobody doesn't need to be a farmer, but we need to know the practical, the basic element of this issue and hands-on. And as each individual or school and university bring their own power and potential. So in Japanese, we have word of the hyakusho, in English called farmers. Hyaku is mean 100. 100 is mean 100 different skills. So we try to make it very dynamic. And I do believe with Robinson that in ancient time, especially in Edo period, we had very sustainable living style. So we're trying to revitalize this element.
Okay, thank you so much, Baran-san. That was really important and useful information. Now I would like to maybe move it to Rina-san. Now that you are an activist and a pro-environmental activist, sorry for the redundancy, what will be that important role that the future generations will have to play in that activism?
So
I used to read the climate movement called Fridays for Future around Kansai area. And so during my belong to Fridays for Future, and also I'm still doing protesting activity on new coal-fired power plants project in Kobe. And actually, if I'm asked what is the largest cause of CO2 emission in Japan, is energy sector, especially from fossil fuel burning. And actually in Japan, so many development projects which ignore the health of human being, or policy decision which doesn't take care of diversity or human rights. And without people protesting against such projects or policy, citizens may be judged to approve it. So if we do not react to anything, they just still start. So I think the protesting, it's hard for people to join, but at least some people should continue it.
Thank you so much for that wonderful response, Arina. Now I would like to ask for Kosuke's opinion. Do you have something to add to that comment?
Oh, a difficult topic to talk as a youth, but about those, I mean, first of all, I really agree with the coal emission made from those electronic sector making. And we often see the news, and as a young people, we don't see a lot of news, right? I think you guys might remember, but when you were young, we don't look a lot on the news and smartphones and TVs. But we know a little bit about it, like we shouldn't do that, we shouldn't do that. We just ignore and we just stay there. But instead, now we have the power of internet. We can access to anything, you know. We should voice up and make our opinion or idea itself more stronger. Like we should do this, not just by listening to the internet, saying they said that, so oh, okay. But instead we should be like, oh, I see this, I see this, I see this, I see this. So maybe this is a better solution for this. We might just need to say it out, move it out, or don't do that, or don't buy this stuff. We should make actions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was really important information. Now, I would like to ask to Robin. In my misu, the whole company or movement encourages us to use less water bottles, less plastic, and less plastic bottles, and I guess by extension, less plastic in general. And just for quick information, an average Japanese uses around as many as 450 plastic shopping bags each year, more than one each day, 11 times higher than Indonesia and 17 times higher than the UK. Japanese people also purchase up to 23.2 billion PET bottles nationwide annually. It is about 183 for each person. Now, considering those high numbers, how can this level of consumption be reduced? And do you think there is a will for people to change their consumption or habits?
Thank you. So I think when we look at social change, there's two general directions. One is top down and one is bottom up. Top down just means new rules, new policies, new legislation. To be concrete, for example, making plastic bags charged, right? You have to pay now for plastic bags. Bottom up means action from students, from young people, from entrepreneurs starting new businesses, from nonprofits. When we can combine those two things together, then we can change the whole system. So we need both ends, top down and bottom up, to work together, which is why this kind of conversation is so important. Secondly, I'll just make it really brief, is we need, I think Kosuke-san mentioned this idea of not sacrificing, right? I really agree with that. It's not about sacrificing the things that we have today. It's about building a more positive future through creativity, through fun, through interesting ideas. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to do better, to create new solutions as citizens as well.
Sorry,
Thank
if I
you
may
so much.
jump in a little bit on this, there's a
Yes.
question from the audience, from the online audience, how you stated that this idea actually start with a small entry points, as you mentioned earlier, but some of these ideas might actually get negative feedback, like maybe the society that couldn't really accept it, like the use of biodegradable plastics in Malaysia, for example. I think one of our audience bring it up. What should we do to overcome this? What's your perspective on this, Robinson?
Thank you. I would go back to Bahram-san's comment about education as well, right? If we can work with people to understand that the solution is fundamentally reducing consumption, then it doesn't matter if we're recycling or using biodegradable alternatives, but we have to understand that to fundamentally deal with our current environmental crisis, we have to review the way that we live, and we have to reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce is the absolute priority. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you so much, Robin. And now for our last question, I would like to ask Madeline, and maybe bringing back something that was talked a couple of minutes back about the local business, about the local stores. What is the role of those local stores as an asset for the sustainable living in the city planning? Could you answer that for me, please?
I'd love to. It's very important to support local businesses. This is because the smaller the company is, the smaller their carbon footprint is likely to be. So supporting small businesses also keeps that money in the local economy, instead of shopping online at a place like Amazon. Well, it's convenient to get same day delivery, but there is a price to pay for that convenience. And unfortunately, it's kind of an environmental price to pay. The delivery trucks on the road results in more noise and air pollution, which is detrimental to our health. So it's important for people in cities and elsewhere to try, when you can, to shop from local stores. It'll help the community in many ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, before we take our break, I would like to ask the audience. I would like the audience to post to answer a simple poll question in the chat online. The poll question is, do you consume more or less plastic than 10 years ago? So right now we are going to start in our 10 minutes break, and have a good and relaxing break. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, I will kindly ask you to please come back from your 10 minutes break. I'll ask the panelists as well to return to their seats. Let's get started with the second half of our panel discussion. I will now pass the mic, give the leadership to my partner, Shirley.
Thank you very much, Jose. Let's jump back straight to the discussion. So first, I think before the break, Jose has asked you, the online audiences, to fill out the poll, whether or not they consume more or less plastic compared to 10 years ago. And here is the result. I'll read it for everyone. So 39% of the audience's answers that they consume more plastics, and 61% of the audiences mentioned that they consume less plastics. So thank you very much for filling out the poll, and this is just a little bit of food for thoughts for everyone in here. And I'd like to maybe move on a little bit to one of the most, I guess, like popular topic when it comes to taking individual actions to help the environment, which is the idea of eating less meat. So there's a considerable evidence that suggests that meat consumption has a very high levels damage towards the environment. So this section, part 3, is gonna be focusing more on our role in sustainability. So I'd like to maybe start with Erina-san. So vegetarianism is still something that isn't so common in Japan. How important is reducing meat consumption in order to reduce the CO2 emissions, in your opinion?
Thank you. So the livestock industry makes up more than 14% of all man-made greenhouse gases, including CO2 and methane. In Japan, actually, comparing to other country like US, the livestock industry doesn't have so much problematic issue, I guess, but actually it's extracts a lot of land and resource, for example, soybean or which cow or livestock eats. So obviously we should reduce the consumption of meat. But yeah, I think the way of thinking of vegetarian or veganism has not spread out in Japan yet. So I want to get tips from other panelists later.
Mm-hmm. And maybe Madeline-san, will you like to add this on the perspective of the US maybe?
Sure. It's definitely more common in the US, I believe. I personally am not strictly a vegetarian, but I do try to limit my consumption of meats. And when I visited Japan in 2019, I did find it quite difficult to follow my dietary restriction. The US, as Edina-san mentioned, does have a problematic meat industry. There's a lot of factory farming that occurs here, which is just on a very large scale production of meat products, and it's really bad for the environment because of all the emissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And can I also get
add something?
Yes, of course.
So whole life cycle assessment, for example, livestock or meat. So you can find a meat, like cheaper meat from Canada or US at the supermarket, right? So it's at least better to choose a meat made domestically. That is one alternative solution.
Thank you very much for that addition. And can I also get a perspective from Bahram-san, maybe, like considering about organic food and also maybe relating it more to the value of education on these issues? Like, what is the key of good education about the environment? What should we teach and who should we target on this issue?
Thank you very much. It's a very meaningful question. Well, in one family, if we have, say, I have five brothers, we have 5 different character and 5 different belief and value. And look at our hand. Our hand, each finger has a different size, different. So it's sometimes could be hard to arrange individual in some certain of direction. But actually, we do have a school and university. Now, all the information has been know what is the issues, what is the problem. So I do believe that in Japanese education, there is some saying, I would translate in Japanese, in English also, 子供を親の背中を見て育つ, which is mean that children will follow parents' behavior. That's really true. At the same time, I do believe our teachers, our professor of school and university has a stronger impact and influence for our children, for our students, right? Because the time that they're spending with them is much, much longer. So we need the brave teachers, professor, of course, a student, to come to the side and take the action one by one. It needs to be programmed, then we can have the practical progress on what we are growing, you know. And we are going to make it happen. From this year, we are going to establish a nature school and raise the green leader. What do you say? Few seconds only. A green leader is to knowing the problem of the environment and the community and take action to solve this problem. That's what we believe, and we are going to make such a school.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Bahram-san. So Bahram-san
I would
mentioned,
also like to
Yes,
jump in,
of
and I would
course.
like to hear maybe a comment from Kosuke-san.
Yeah, okay. To addition to Bahram-san's answer, I think Japanese people, speaking of Japanese people, is kind of interesting thing. Japanese people like to have habits and rules. And just now, Robinson talked about the use of plastics, number 2, or the emission of carbon dioxide is number 5 in the world. But speaking of cardboard, the recycle number is number 2 in the world. We recycle on the second on cardboard. And when I think what's the difference between not recycling plastic and cardboard is just a habit, a habitual thing, and having those schools and having those understanding habitual of doing something, not doing something, can make Japan more sustainable. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kosuke-san. So maybe I'd like to shift a little bit to Robin-san, because Bahram-san mentioned about schools and university, but in your experiences, you work with private entities and also more on like companies. So how can we better integrate this education into like, let's say, companies about the importance of sustainable living? So what was your way in doing it?
That's a really great question. It's a big question too. I'll keep it very short. When working with companies, I think it's very important to prioritize the fact that this is a benefit to the company. It's not a cost, it's a benefit. So when a company is more sustainable, when they're more responsible, when they're more ethical, they will do better as a business. Why? Because they get better talent, they get better employees, they can reach a new consumer group, right? They can potentially reach new customers. They can save costs, right? If I reduce my water usage in my supply chain, I'm saving money. There's so many reasons to see this as a benefit for a business, not as a cost. So there's many reasons, but those are just a few.
Thank you very much. That's such a different perspective. I learned a lot from that as well. So maybe can I get a perspective from Madeline-san, like in the perspective of an urban planner, or like from governmental like perspective as well? What are some things that the government can help, or like in helping changing the attitudes, or like as Kosuke-san, like the habits of the citizens, to encourage more sustainable living?
That is a great question. Excuse me. Before I had mentioned earlier about how there's a stigma against public transit in the US. And I think that one of the ways that governments can help lead people towards the public transit, which is more sustainable than driving your personal vehicle, is to offer all residents of a city a subsidized bus pass. So that way it's not seen as a low income last resort option. It's seen as a real option to get around, and it's for everyone. And I think that through small sort of these actions where, you know, people see each other and they say, oh, okay, I guess it's not that bad. It's not unsafe. It's not a bad option. That I think that is how governments can help enact change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madeline. Now, I'd like to get a perspective from Kosuke-san. So maybe in the context of Japan or like surrounding the topic of youth, what were some of the main reasons that people avoid taking action to stop climate change? What were some of the challenges that you have experienced, for example?
Okay. As a youth, I mean, first of all, 2 days here at the physical place, I think I see many elderly people, and yeah. And I think you might need to remember back a little bit when you were young, seeing people doing like, let's do something, let's clean something, let's don't use this for the environment. Does it look very cool? Like for me and for my friends, it seems a lot cool kids, like, you know, being so active on doing something. Right now, because of the internet nowadays, we have a little better image on that, having, oh, that's a good thing and it's kind of cool, but not yet to everyone to show it out that it's something super cool to do. Everybody wants to be a little bad, but we should show out that more to the young people, and we should maybe give a good illustration, like, oh, like our cool kids is like this, and show them this kind of people to them more online and physically. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kosuke-san. And maybe moving to Erina-san, because Erina herself is a climate activist. So advocates point to the right to protest as a fundamental pillar of functioning democracy. So maybe through your experience, Erina-san, how can protests or like individual actions like the one you took help to bring more positive change in the society?
Thank you. So unlike China or Vietnam, democracy may be functioning in Japan as long as the right to protest is recognized. But did you know that if you want to have demonstration on street, you have to pay 2,000 yen, and also advance application is needed. But police says so. It's actually you need to the process to realize demonstration. But during my experience protesting, for example, in Osaka Yodobashi Kamera or Sannomiya Street, at first, so people didn't try to talk to me, but having the protest every week, some people recognize us and started to talk to me. And as I mentioned in previous question, so why protesting is important? Because by doing nothing, so young people or citizens ignore of the development project or policies which doesn't count minority voice. So under this situation, we should continue protesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So definitely it's something that we do today that has a meaningful impact towards the future as well. So maybe one of the questions that we have received from the audience, and maybe I'll direct this to Robinson. So as individuals or organizations, what do you think we will be or you will be doing to tackle climate change in the 10 years time? So like looking more towards like the future and like, you know, what will be the areas of focus, you know, how will our world change within this like 10 years span?
in the next 10 years, I honestly think I'll be doing the same thing in 10 years' time, hopefully on a bigger scale. I love working with high school students, university students, companies to help create new solutions, new ideas. And that's really what we do now. And that's what I hope to continue doing in 10 years' time. And I hope to be doing it with fun and joy and creativity. I hope I'm not, really tired and have given up by then. So I will still be doing this in 10 years' time, I'm sure.
Amazing, amazing. Can I also
would
get a
like-
perspective from Bahram-san, maybe?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I would like to have addition to Robinson's word. Yeah, I do believe another Japanese saying come to my mind was a wai tenjite fukuto nasu kotoba, the word which is difficulty and challenge will bring also some at the same time opportunities. I do believe that the Z generation, young generation, once get involved in the nature, in the environment, they can be more flexible and more creative, and they can adopt even better, business opportunity, entrepreneur. So we should look at not only negative, but also there is a positive things that we can attract the young generation to come to the side and be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'd like just to transition back to Jose-san to lead our last section for today, which is today and tomorrow, more on the call to action towards all of us in this space. Back to you, Jose.
Thank you so much, Shirley. And before we start with our section 4, I would like to ask Robin-san, at the beginning, back up to section 1, you mentioned an important comment about recycling. I would like you to maybe get a little bit deeper into that topic, into that opinion. Could you do that for me, please?
Okay, so I'll keep it very short again, but a lot of plastic waste is recycled. Let's stick to Japan for now. Recycling is not a bad thing, but it's not the perfect solution. So when you look at recycling right now, we actually combust the majority of our recycled plastic through a process called samaru recycling. In English, it would be energy recovery or thermal recycling. Anyway, the point is, we are not recycling 100% of our plastic waste. A lot of it is burned or sent to other countries, which is why we need to really focus on reducing the amount that we consume and produce. And that's why Maimizu, I think, provides value. There's also many other initiatives that help people to reduce their plastic consumption, because recycling is not the ultimate solution. Does that answer the question?
Thank you so much. Really, thank you so much. That's really appreciate information. And now continue with our section 4. I'd like to show a short video from Leonardo DiCaprio. Some of you might know him as a famous Hollywood actor. You may not have known that he has also been involved in environmental action and was the United Nations Messenger of Peace and opener of the United Nations Climate Summit back in 2014. Let's listen what he had to say.
Before you, not as an expert, but as a concerned citizen, one of the 400,000 people who marched in the streets of New York on Sunday, and the billions of others around the world who want to solve our climate crisis. As an actor, I pretend for a living. I play fictitious characters, often solving fictitious problems. I believe that mankind has looked at climate change in that same way, as if it were a fiction, as if pretending that climate change wasn't real would somehow make it go away. But I think we all know better than that now. Every week, we're seeing new and undeniable climate events, evidence that accelerated climate change is here right now. Droughts are intensifying, our oceans are acidifying, with methane plumes rising up from the ocean floor. We are seeing extreme weather events and the West Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets melting at unprecedented rates, decades ahead of scientific projections. None of this is rhetoric. and none of it is hysteria. It is fact. The scientific community knows it, industry knows it, governments know it, even the United States military knows it. The chief of the US Navy's Pacific Command, Admiral Samuel Locklear, recently said that climate change is our single greatest security threat. My friends, this body, perhaps more than any other gathering in human history, now faces this difficult but achievable task. You can make history, or you will be vilified by it. To be clear, this is not about just telling people to change their light bulbs or to buy a hybrid car. This disaster has grown beyond the choices that individuals make. This is now about our industries and our governments around the world taking decisive, large-scale action. Now must be our moment for action. We need to put a price tag on carbon emissions and eliminate government subsidies for oil, coal, and gas companies. We need to end the free ride that industrial polluters have been given in the name of a free market economy. They do not deserve our tax dollars. They deserve our scrutiny, for the economy itself will die if our ecosystems collapse. The good news is that renewable energy is not only achievable, but good economic policy. This is not a partisan debate, it is a human one. Clean air and a livable climate are inalienable human rights. And solving this crisis is not a question of politics, it is a question of our own survival. This is the most urgent of times and the most urgent of messages. Honored delegates, leaders of the world, I pretend for a living, but you do not. The people made their voices heard on Sunday around the world, and the momentum will not stop. But now it is your turn. The time to answer humankind's greatest challenge is now. We beg of you to face it with courage and honesty. Thank you.
Right now, that was 9 years ago. The message was loud and clear. But when I hear this speech, I wonder if anything has changed. I want all of our audience to think about it. Then, moving next to the questions, I would like to ask, if you were a member of the COP, what policy would you enact and why? I would like to start with you, Baran-san.
Right. I think same thing over and over. I would say same thing. Yeah, we go to school and learn, and we spend huge amount of the time. I do believe that school need a big role to bring the solution. And it's not matter what you know, because what you know and I know is already in the net. Chat and AI, artificial intelligence, they have all the information. Well, we need to act. What we need to act, we need to create a competition between school and university. Who does more? Who serves more? Rather than who knows more? Because the information is already in different language more than enough. But what we need to do, just take action. The government has a different role, but individual and school, we have also some role to do. And it's a time for us to start, as Robinson says, from bottom to top. And the bottom is our core value education, our belief. So we can change it by bringing strength in the education, a real field.
Thank you so much. So just for paraphrasing, maybe more focus about the education, school, accessibility to that important information, and not just gather the information, do something relevant, something that will change our route, our maybe direction as a humanity. Thank you so much for that important information. Now, I would like to hear from Irina. What would you do if you were a member from the COP?
Several years ago, I participated in UN climate change conference. as youth from Japan. And there I joined in making a manuscript for press conference with a presenter from Fiji, island country. And youth is actually one of the negotiating stakeholder in United Nations. And from the experience, based on the climate justice thinking, Japan or developed countries should give a fund or knowledge more to loss and damage of developing country. And in addition, do you know, so I mentioned about UN goal to stop climate change, the temperature rise until 1.5 degree, but actually the CO2 emission calculation has a lot of problem, loopholes. So in the calculation, imported fossil fuel or biomass fuel or commodities are not included. So to push more the discussion to achieve the goal, each country has to really discuss the calculation problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irina. Now, I would like to ask to Madeline, how do you see individuals, NGOs, corporations, and governmental sectors working collaboratively to solve climate crisis? And what can we do together? I would like to hear your perspective as an urban planner.
Thank you. I think that what we can do together is, like everyone says, to think global and act local. And I think that really is the key, because the most change that you can enact is on the local level, is at the smallest scale of government. And this can serve as an example for other small governments to follow in your steps. So I think about leading by example, and as by building a strong community that we can work together to solve climate issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, I would like to hear a more business perspective, a more corporative perspective. Could you help me with that, Robinson?
I think the great thing about the 17 global goals for sustainable development, the SDGs, is that they provide a common language for people from different sectors to have discussions. So let's say I'm a company and I'm working on SDG 11, which is sustainable communities, and I see another NGO doing SDG 11 stuff. I can think, hey, look, let's have a conversation. Let's see how we can work together. And so I think the SDGs provides a fantastic framework to find these win-win partnerships, win-win collaborations between private sector, academia, NGOs, and civil society to work together. So I would encourage you to reach out to other organizations and see how you can collaborate.
Sorry, just to jump in a little bit here, we have a question from another audience, which talks about, so the question is, how can I tackle SDGs? They seem so overwhelming. So since you mentioned about SDGs, like, you know, maybe you were looking at it as a perspective of organizations, like maybe as individuals, like what are some steps that could, you know, if you could break down into like actionable steps for tackling SDGs, Robinson?
Okay, so first of all, the SDGs are very broad. There's 17 goals, 169 targets. It's a huge framework, right? I would pick specific areas that are relevant to your life. So let's say clean energy. In Japan, we're very lucky. in 5 minutes, we can change our household to renewable energy in 5 minutes, phone, internet, whatever. So that's one thing you can do right now. In terms of carbon emissions, you can, for example, go plant-based, eat vegetarian or vegan food 5 days a week, 1 day a week, doesn't matter. You can do whatever is relevant to your life, whatever is interesting to your life. So I would start mapping out where your life is relevant to the SDGs, and then just start to pick up action points that will contribute to those goals.
Thank you so much. And now that you mentioned those everyday actions, I would like to also ask Irina, based on your experience, please share some everyday ways to improve our carbon footprint and become more sustainable. Yes, everyday actions.
Thank you. So in my presentation, I showed some points of my daily life, and there, so one of the action I've done these days was making solar panel system by yourself. Actually, I've joined in a workshop. It's 2 hours length one, and you had to pay 15,000 yen, but actually it was subsidized by Suita City. And I'm living in small apartment, so it's hard to attach a panel on rooftop. So I got like this size of solar panel, and was not so difficult. It's like science junior high school class, and we needed to some equipment to build up. And at home, actually, I haven't started using because without battery it doesn't work. But first of all, you can check how much power, electricity you use, for example, from dryer or TV or anything. It has like kilowatt or ampere. It's a little bit small number, but by calculating how much energy you use, you will know which I should stop using dryer like 2 minutes less, or you will know what you have to do. So it's actually fun way to reduce energy in your life.
Thank you so much. I would like to now ask Baran-san, after you start with your activism, with your actions for the community, did you notice any change, something different? The people start to take actions about what you are fighting for? Did you find something relevant in your community?
Yes, thank you. Yes, obviously people responding little by little. So it's important the change will not come in 1 day, 1 week, a month, but it's come one by one and is influencing, thanks to the God, these days we have social media. Like a small action, even small solar panel in your balcony is bringing the impact to society, one piece, one step at a time. So we have, how to say, some progress in that field, and we know by that, then we need not only us, but also we need to influence other people. And these days, social media are playing a very important role, and young people, they are very good at to, how to say, to use and bring it more outcome result out of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we have to start with small actions, and that will inspire our whole community. Thank you so much for that inspiring message. Now, I would like to ask to all of our panelists, what is your #1 tip for a sustainable living? If you could give me an answer in 30 seconds, I would really appreciate it. Shall we start with the ladies? The scenario is yours, Madeline-san.
Thank you. My number one tip for sustainable living is to vote with your dollars. So you can take political action by choosing the ways that you consume. This can be by supporting a small business, buying your groceries from a local farm, getting things like clothes and furniture secondhand, or just doing your research and supporting sustainable companies as much as you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'd like to hear from Erina-san.
So my number one tip is to contribute to the local economy to sustain the community within your town. So it's also important to be aware of carbon footprint of commodities, where it comes from, but also in your community, you can contribute by your shopping habits. And there is no place more trustworthy because, so for example, at rice store in your local community, so most of the customer, the shopkeeper know each other. So they should give some trustworthy rice. So it's win-win relations, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'd like to hear from Robin-san.
Thank you. Since Kosuke-san mentioned there were some older people in the audience, which is fantastic, I'm going to say one thing before is please look at where your money is. Your retail bank, your pension fund has a really huge impact on the environment because banks often fund fossil fuel projects. So please look into your finances, first step. Second one, sorry, is to connect the individual action with collective impact. It's really important to do things in your day-to-day life, but please make sure to connect it, join a group, attend events, give feedback to companies, and vote. And finally, remember, please, to be creative, have fun, enjoy, because unless it's fun, it's very hard to continue these activities.
Thank you so much for that positive message. Now I'd like to move it to Baran-san. What's your number one tip?
Right. Yeah, my idea is hand X, hand no. It means half agriculture and half your passion, whatever you like to do. So it does not mean you need to be 50% farmer. It doesn't like that. But I think it's important worldwide, not only in Japan, most of us, we are consumer. Majority, let's say 90%, more than 90%, but not only in Japan. So we need to have a balance. By making some food, producing, you can understand deeply, better understanding what's going on, and then you can be part of this circle in positive and impactable, very strong way. And another thing is maybe simple living. For living, you don't need 20 pair of the shoes. A few shoes is okay, because if you have 20, you have to have a space. For in order to good connection, good quality, you need to have the air conditioner, this and that space. So it's best of the energy. So simple living is one solution also. Okay.
Thank you so much. That was really inspiring. Now, I would like to hear from Kosuke-san.
Okay. As I wrote here, one step by one person can make a difference. And I think you have heard this word a lot of times. We say it by small change, by small individual can change, but we should remind it again that even the small change that we make will have a big impact to our society. Maybe not just positive, maybe negative, but we need to be aware that we have impact to our society. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now, my last question, now that we keep moving with you, with Kosuke, what is your message to young people now and in the future?
To young people, then I would say sorry in the first place. I mean, not just me, but my ancestors and everyone here right now is making the world having some problem and issues about climate change. And this is because of the human activity that we have done in the past and right now what we are doing. And because of that, I want to say sorry. And also in the same time, I want to say, please change it in your generation. We will do our best, and I want you all to do our best. And speaking of young people, we often think that young people doesn't have a lot of power when we are young because we see many elderly people doing the jobs, being in the position of higher ranks. But actually, it isn't. For example, for me, I founded a student council in my high school, and I was the president of the student council. Not just that, but I'm also working as a board member in a private company in Osaka. And I'm also doing some advisor for some companies. And now you might think, hey, you are doing those advisor or board member because you are joining in a startup company or a small company, but actually not. Do you know a company called Yugurena? It's a Jojo company in Japan, and they have a position called CFO, not Chief Financial Officer, but Chief Future Officer, meaning that having teenagers to involve in the board to talk about sustainability or how the company is run. And they have voice there in the position. Now, many companies is adding those positions too. The platform is increasing. Now, young people have power. Please, let's work on for the better future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful comment. And now I would like to pass the leadership to my partner.
Thank you very much, Jose. So before we finish today, I'd like to ask the audience to do a quick pledge for themselves. So those of you who are in person, you will be given a small card where you can write a pledge or a promise to yourself to make one positive change to improve your carbon footprint. So you can pick and choose one small actionable steps that will bring big impact, and you can keep it in your phone or wallet. And for those of you who are joining us online, we have provided a Mentimeter, which is going to be sent to right there, a Mentimeter link, and you can comment anonymously, and we're going to share with everybody in the audiences today about one actionable steps that you can take. So let's take maybe 4 to 5 minutes to write down a small one actionable steps that you can do from today to help the environment.
So those who are here in the studio, we would like to remind you that inside of the file that was given at the entrance, there is a pen and the pledge that you can fill on. Thank you so much. All right, thank you so much for those pledges. Now, that brings us to an end of today's panel discussion. I'd like to thank our esteemed panelists and keynote speaker, Irina, Bahrain, Robin, Madeline, and Koske. And of course, all of you who attended online or in person. I would also like to thank deeply to Asahi Shimbun for providing us with the studio and a lot of cooperation and help with this panel discussion. I hope this has been a thought-provoking session. To find out more about what's on Osaka YMCA, please visit our website as www.osakaymca.or.jp. For those who are online, I'd like to remind you that you will have the option to fill out a quick survey about today's session when you close the Zoom meeting link. Also, if you had like to make a donation to support the Global Youth Conference, which will be holding in August this year, you can find the link through our website or the chat box. Thank you so much. So I would like to thank personally to the audience, really good audience, really active. Everybody was like having a little bit of participation in themselves. Really, thank you so much for coming today. And also, I would like to remind, if you have any questions for any of our panelists that you would like to ask directly, you are free to do it. Or if you have any comments that you would like to have, we are more than happy to welcome.
Thank you very much for your very in-depth presentation, and comments on all of these key issues. For now, for people of all ages and all countries, I think it's a really good opportunity to look back a little bit on the things we do every day. And I would like to ask you maybe your opinion. Maybe it's a little bit complex, but I would just like one comment. What do you guys think about using nuclear energy as a way to substitute some of the fossil fuels kind of sourced energy?
Thank you so much for that wonderful question. Some of our panelists would like to answer it. It's all yours, Kosuke-san.
Speaking of the nuclear power plant, I think it's considered to be a dangerous thing because of the tsunami event that happened in Japan. But actually, it has a lot of benefit. Speaking of the efficiencies, it's quite well. And also the danger of the nuclear power plant, if we have the better cover of it, if there's not such kind of tsunami coming out, most cases it's going to be fine in the safety. But the scary part is that we have the water that contaminates the radioactiveness inside, and we need to think of where we're going to dispose it. And that's the big issues. But we have issues in the coal or other kind of electricity making. So we need to see the balance. But I think it's a better option compared to the coal burning.
Right. I have also answer. Well, to be honest, I'm not export specialist, but according to Jacques Attali, he's from France and he's very kind of philosopher person. He believes this is one way of using energy, but you need to definitely, as Kosuke-san says, the safety measure need to be very precise and very practical managed. By doing that, perhaps we can do, but we need to first clear that safety part, in my opinion also. Yeah. Nice question for this one. I think is energy is a big key element, really. Thank you.
So my question is, how can we convince the government with an alternative to overpackaging to still maintain those high standards of hygiene and cleanness of the Japan culture? Thank you.
Anyone would like to answer? Okay. Anyone? Robin? Robin, please go.
Oh no, sorry, go ahead. Okay, I'll just share some thoughts. So this is an area we work on a lot, and one action that stands out is, for example, I know a high schooler started a petition to essentially gather the opinions of young people and then present that to the government, present it to companies. So that was a very simple but effective way of encouraging government bodies to take action on plastic packaging. Secondly, if I can just say one other thing that's really valuable, is when you're at a cafe or a restaurant or a shop that is doing something like sustainable, whether it's reusable cups or paper straws, whatever it is, just saying, hey, I really like this, thank you for doing this, has a really big impact on that small business owner's mindset. So providing positive feedback is just as important as providing critical feedback.
Very shortly, if I answer, I think is this packaging and hygiene is too much extreme, to be honest. Not because of the food waste and is increasing CO2, but also one of the case in Sumo, nori, they are making nori, and the river is getting too clean, so it reduces so many bacteria, and and that's caused a problem actually. So you need to balance. So we need to return, and the human body has a good bacteria also. So we need to rearrange, reshift it. And I think maybe government won't change easily. So from Robinson said, from bottom to up, I think is more from individual, from the community. I think we should make a good model. That's the key, I believe. Nice question. Thank you.
Right, thanks so much. I think that will be the end of our panel discussion. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
Robinson. さんよければ。いいかなと思いますけれども、いかがでしょうか。お願いします。
Yeah, Shirley-san, Madeline-san, thank you very much. Wonderful job. Thank you. It's a lot of work and you did really well. Yeah. We'll meet sometime in the near future.